regular meeting. And start with a roll call, please.
Amber Harness.
Here.
Samantha McDavid.
Present.
Steve Byers.
Present.
Ariel Owens.
Present.
Christopher Boyes.
Present.
Daisy Ramirez.
Present.
Vanta Bynum.
Present.
Welcome to our first regular board meeting in our newly renovated boardroom. Unfortunately, due to some unfortunate circumstances, we had to renovate this building, so you all benefit. And hopefully at home you can hear better. I'd love to get an email if you can. We are going to start first with public comments. Members of the public who wish to speak to the board should complete a request card prior to the start of the meeting. This section of the meeting will be reserved for comments from the public. All comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and criticism of individuals is not in order. Do we have any public comments tonight? Next is board correspondence. Is there anything that anyone would like to share?
I attended a couple meetings. I attended, since our last board meeting, I attended a DEI meeting. I also attended a differential meeting. Both went great. Great work is being done there, and look forward to hopefully seeing more of that work come forward to the board.
Anyone else?
I attended field day at Lincoln.
Oh, I bet that was
It was a
wonderful.
hoot.
Okay, then we will move on to subject C, the Energy Star certification. Administration, do you want me to read this, Tammy, or would you like to read this? Okay. Administration is excited to share that DeKalb High School, Clinton Rosette Middle School, and Cortland Elementary School have earned the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Energy Star certification for superior energy efficiency. This recognition is awarded to buildings that outperform 75% of similar buildings nationwide. This recognition represents the diligent work of our staff to save money and reduce operating costs through industry best practices and careful attention to energy performance each month. The Energy Star certification is the only energy efficiency certification that is based on actual verified energy performance. Studies have shown that Energy Star certified buildings have lower operating costs and increased asset value, are more marketable and command higher rental rates, contribute fewer greenhouse gas emissions to the environment. By earning this certification, the district is publicly showcasing our commitment to environmental responsibility and demonstrating that the district is doing our part to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and preserve public health today and for future generations. Administration will be pursuing certifications at our other buildings and will share the information if other Energy Star certifications are received. Thank you, Tammy and team. Next, we have presentations, with the first one being the State of the District End of Year Data, and this is being presented tonight by Miss Amana Quinette Parker and Miss Jessica Nall.
Before we start, welcome to the new board members. I know Amana Quinette has had a chance to meet you. I haven't. I'm Jessica Nall. I'm the coordinator of assessments, and we're both very glad to be here. And we also are fairly informal people, despite the way we're dressed this evening. So if you have questions as we go, the data presentation always has many slides, and I tend to talk very quickly. So if there are questions in the moment, I think we'd both much rather answer them, and then we can circle back if we need to, but please feel free to ask questions as they come up.
Okay, all right. So as we close each school year, we do this. So this is end of year. You'll see it for the next 4 years. It's time for us to reflect on what has worked and, of course, what hasn't worked. The contents of this presentation, which is also available for public review, is it will serve as an underpinning as we continue to try to find solutions to issues and as we implement different strategies for our district growth. Okay, so you can come. I'll go.
Okay, sounds good. This will be the same format for anyone who saw it in the winter. It seemed like it was a good way to present the information that we have in a way that's easy to digest and understand. So hopefully you feel like that's the case. If not, going forward, we're always happy to make adjustments so that things are more easily understood for a wide variety of audiences. So we're
Really
starting
quick, should their mic be green?
You must touch it.
That is, it's a helpful feature.
Ben with the assist from his seat. We start with our suspension data for this school year. So it was a suggestion from the strategic planning committee to present things in this way. How many of our students have been suspended this year, either in school or out of school, versus how many of our students have not been suspended at all this year? So as you can see, 92% of our elementary school students were not suspended at all this year, 76% of our middle school students, and 75% of our high school students. And then with a lot of this data, the next slide compares it to last school year. So during the last school year, the numbers were slightly lower in terms of the numbers of students and the percentages of students who were suspended. And again, that's any type of suspension, in school or out. This presents information on the type of suspension, so whether students were suspended out of school or in school only. One thing that's interesting is if we look at our elementary school data, most of those suspensions are out of school. That's not necessarily because of the severity of the infraction, although certainly that can be the case, but because there is no physical space in most elementary school buildings where an in-school suspension makes any sense. So in case that data is confusing, that's a little bit of an explanation. And this is last year. So one thing you can see if you look between the 2 years is that we're working hard to keep students in the building where we have some measure of control over how they're spending their time. Even if they're not able to be in class because of behaviors or other things like that, we can still provide them with instructional materials and have staff available to answer questions and things like that. So that's certainly, I would say that's an improvement. If we're going to have students not in class, at least they're under our roof so we can hopefully keep moving them forward. This is our student suspension data compared to our district demographics. So the percentage of students who were suspended that falls into each demographic category is in blue, and the percentage of the population that student group makes up is in red. What you would expect to see if our suspensions were distributed evenly across all students is that the red and blue would be parallel to one another. And what you see in this is obviously that's not the case for us, with African American students overrepresented in our group of students who have been suspended at least one time. And you can read the rest of it with white students underrepresented in the percentage of students that have been suspended at least one time.
And this is trend data. This is data that we have seen for a number of years.
So if we go to the next slide, this is last year's data. It does look like it's getting slightly, the gap is narrowing slightly. We still have a very long way to go. This is our attendance data. Our district average is 87%. And then each school building is represented. I don't think it's particularly surprising that at the bookends we have lower attendance rates as students have a bit more autonomy when they're in high school, whether they show up or are not able to. And at the early learning set at the ELDC, young kids get sick kind of a lot. So attendance data, and this is by grade. So again, the same type of breakdown where you see elementary school students really helping us with that average. And our assessment data, which will start with MAP growth, which is the benchmarking assessment we give 3 times a year to all students. This year, as a reminder, we started giving this assessment to our first grade students, and next year we'll be giving this assessment for kindergarten through 8th grade, so we'll have a really good look at longitudinal data, K-8, using our MAP test for benchmarking. This is the growth data from last spring, so last year at this time to this year at this time. MAP gives every student that takes these tests a goal that they think they can reach over the course of a year. It is different by student. So it doesn't expect that every student will grow 10 points necessarily. It expects that every student will grow the amount that a student who has demonstrated their level of mastery is likely to grow. So the percentages in orange are the percentage of students who met that goal. Not that grew an arbitrary amount, but that met the goal that MAP said they would grow. One thing that's interesting about this is in order to have a growth score, you have to have been tested in DeKalb last spring and this spring. So this would only be our group of students that have been in DeKalb for at least 4 of those testing periods. The black percentiles is the national growth percentile, which I really like because, as we said last time we did this presentation, the orange is just like an on or off switch. You either met the goal that MAP said you are likely to meet or you did not. The black actually measures the amount that students grew. So even if you came right up close to that line but didn't quite cross it, your growth still gets counted. Whereas for the orange percentiles, it doesn't. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So this is our math growth information. The reason it starts in grade 3 is because our second graders did not take it last year as first graders. Next year we'll have more information. And more kids will be taking it. And this is our reading growth. So again, number of students who met their growth goal and the national growth percentile. Then if we look at just how students did on the MAP reading and English assessment, this is how our students in grades 1 through 5 did district-wide.
Can I ask a question on the previous slide, the math growth reading? So on the math one, it makes sense to me why most of the black bars are higher than the orange bars, because some more students made some growth even if they didn't make their like projected growth goal. But on the reading, it's kind of reversed. Why? What does that indicate anything? Am I like trying to find something where there's nothing?
It does look strange, right? But if you think about what goes into the orange one, any student who was right above the line would count, but perhaps there were far more students whose needs in reading were not met necessarily, so they weren't making progress or they were demonstrating negative progress. So if you have a bunch of students who don't get any taller at all, the fact that some kids get taller by the amount you would expect is outweighed by the fact that these students aren't getting taller.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah.
It is confusing data, which is why we're happy to answer any questions as we go, but it's something that we wanna make sure we're keeping track of. And the orange and black, I think, are both super important because we do want every student to be able to grow a ton, especially as much as MAP says they're able to grow. So we would like that number to be very high, but we also wanna make sure we're looking at the black numbers because if the students came close but didn't quite make it, or if they grew a whole bunch, we want to measure that, which the percentiles in black do.
So I guess to piggyback off of her question, I didn't click. Just looking at these, whether you're looking at the black bar or the orange bar, for the majority of these, the larger percentage of our students are not hitting these goals based on what I'm looking at, if I'm interpreting this correctly.
I think probably what you want to look at to answer that question is actually these charts that are coming, which will have the red, yellow, green, and blue boxes for many more slides to come. And that'll show you if you took the test and didn't consider growth, where did students fall? And these are the ones that we consider when we're saying, okay, what are we doing to make sure that these students are getting where we want them to be? Because we do not believe as a district that increasing MAP scores is the goal of public education. We don't. But we also know that if this is our benchmarking assessment, it is giving us some measure of where students are and where we want them to be. We would like every student to be in the green and blue.
Yeah,
That
and
means
just
that-
an
yes.
additional question from my end on that, so when I was in middle school, that's kind of when MAP started to first really get rolled out. Now,
It
how
makes me feel very old, sir.
how seriously is MAP, I guess, taken nowadays? Cause I know when I was in middle school, it was, I'm gonna click buttons because I get to go hang out in the library with my friends for the next 45 minutes of this testing period if I finished it ahead of time.
I think that's a objective question. It depends on who the child is. I do know that our principals have done a phenomenal job of making the test more relevant, especially at certain grade levels. 7th and 8th graders, they know that their spring to spring growth may be an indicator of what classes will be chosen for them because they can wrap their mind around that concept. For others, students, it may just be giving us information. There are features now that are what was not available then, that if a student does just click, 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 it stops them, it alerts the facilitator, and we do have an opportunity for students to retake it if that's the case.
Okay.
So like it recognizes they're pulling
yeah.
the answers too fast,
Oh, yes.
basically.
Absolutely, like you
That's
couldn't
cool.
have possibly read that
Right.
question.
That's
very cool.
Yeah.
And I will say, one of the things we found is that it is hardest in the spring to necessarily believe that that's reflective of students' ability because we wonder if effort dips in the spring when it's nice outside. So one of the things you'll see is for growth, it is a spring to spring measure. So it's an assumption, but it's probably a good one, that students are distracted or dipping in their effort as much from one spring as they are to the next. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But yeah,
The
no,
reality too is that standardized testing do not define success all across. A lot of it is determined about, by district and obviously by how we determine success to be, right?
yes,
Standardized.
and I think we've had this conversation in a number of formats, but it would be wonderful if we focused more on qualitative data.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It would be wonderful if we had a better picture and a fuller picture of all students. We're working toward common summative assessments so we can speak to some of that with things that are that come naturally from our curriculum instead of tests that are aligned to the Common Core but are apart from our curriculum. However, we always want to keep in mind that the state of Illinois is ultimately judging us based on standardized tests and that there's a very good correlation between IAR results and MAP results. And again, I think it's a fine line, right? We
Right.
philosophically would love to simply have a portfolio of information about every student that we can use to help them figure out how to get where they want to be in life. This is one of the tools that we have that can allow us to find out things about all students at the same time. So yeah, no, we're on the same page on that for sure. So this is, I think, the information that you're looking for about how the students are actually doing, not related to growth, but just how they do on the test. Again, everyone being in green and blue is unrealistic. That's sort of like the old Lake Wobegon, all of the children are above average is not actually mathematically possible. We would certainly like to see a distribution that looked more like half of our students were in the green and blue. And we are working hard to figure out how we can change our tier 1 programming to make that a more realistic goal. This is MAP reading percentile groups. Here are the MAP reading percentile groups over the last 6 testing periods, fairly stable. Here are the MAP reading percentile groups broken down by grade. And the MAP reading percentile groups broken down demographically. And by students who qualify for a free and reduced lunch and those who don't. If we look at MAP reading in Spanish, I will probably do more explaining because this is our data district-wide, grades 1 through 5. This test in Spanish reading is only taken by students who are in our dual language programs, so either one-way dual language or two-way dual language. And this year it was taken in first grade for the first time. So first and second grade students who took this test to see how well they read in Spanish have been in our dual language program for, less than 2 years or less than 3 years, and they may be students who speak English at home. So one of the reasons that the data looks the way it does is these students are emergent bilinguals who are learning to be literate in both languages, but we would expect that they aren't necessarily in 4 equal quadrants in the blue, green, yellow, and red. And the same breakdown, reading percentile groups over time. And again, to my point, you can see in fall of 22, that's when we started testing first graders. So that's when we started testing students who had not had nearly as much Spanish instruction and may not speak Spanish at home. And this is by grade level. Maybe I'm strange, but I find this encouraging that it's a place where we don't see that our students who are not low income are at a significant advantage. These are our FastBridge early reading assessments so that our kindergarten data is represented. As a reminder, we won't have this going forward as a benchmarking data piece because we're moving to MAP. And again, I think there are benefits and drawbacks to every benchmarking system, but moving to MAP means we'll be able to have that growth percentage, that growth marker for students at a much younger age. And again, not that we want getting used to a test to be a goal of education, but we feel like we'll have more accurate data in first grade if we're giving MAP in kindergarten. So we may be able to better pinpoint what can we do to help move these scores and get these children to where we want them to be. So this is how our kindergarten students did on letter names this spring, percentile groups. This is district-wide for letter sounds. Letter sounds in Spanish for our two-way dual language kindergartners. And now we've got math assessments for math. So math percentile groups, grades 1 through 5 district-wide. Grades 1 through 5 and 2 through 5 over the last 6 testing periods. Again, that would be grades 2 through 5 for last school year and grades 1 through 5 this school year. By grade level, by demographics. I'm not going fast to prevent you from asking questions simply because there are many slides. So please feel free to stop me or Monica at any point. And again, this is our math percentile groups, but by income level, which obviously is a stark difference. This is our FastBridge early math data. So again, it's the kindergarten measure that we are sunsetting to move to MAP for kindergarten. This is number sequencing, number identification. So those are our 2 math measures for kindergarten.
So when we're looking at kindergarten data,
Yes.
I mean, I guess this is the spring, so this is showing what they knew at the end of the year. It doesn't necessarily give us, I know we have other ways to look at what they're kind of coming in knowing, But it really gives us then an idea of where we need to, like how much acceleration or where we need to provide supports to move, because this would be indicative then that next year they're going to be less ready to start reading potentially, or to start doing more complex math. We're looking at the math right now, but
Depending on where they fell, you mean?
yeah.
Yes. I will say, especially for our elementary school students and especially for our younger elementary school students, we have profile sheets that the teachers spend a lot of time filling out that does provide the qualitative data that I think, especially if you're looking at a kindergartner, I feel like that is incredibly useful, and I'm so appreciative to our teachers that they take the time to fill out this document about every single kid. Because you know how kindergartners are as a mom, right? On one day, they might know all of their letters in 25 seconds, and on one day, they are so I mean, I get it at home with my second grader. It's a very different, and we're giving them a test. They may be taking it in one shot.
One shot.
It's one snapshot, so I don't ever wanna hand wave any data or explain it away. I do feel like moving to math will give us a little bit of a better idea because it's not simply, how many numbers can you identify? It's literally like point to the numbers and tell me what number this says. That could be dull. But again, I think those teacher profile sheets, especially at the elementary level, to me, that's super valuable.
In the profile, I didn't realize that we do that, but that's, I think encouraging, especially in kindergarten where play-based is more appropriate, more developmentally appropriate. You need that qualitative data to really understand where students are at.
Yes, I think it's great at our elementary schools, especially because with the number of students that a teacher has, they can really provide a comprehensive, by spring, a comprehensive portrait of that student as a learner. And then they can walk down the hall and hand it to the first grade teacher and say, you're gonna love this child, and here's why, and here's what worked best with them. And we know that that happens in all of our elementary buildings. It's a lot harder to rely on that kind of information when you're talking about secondary teachers that have 5 or 6 classes. But we are very happy that we can provide hard data and soft data at the elementary level to have every teacher be as prepared as possible to greet the kids that are coming to them, provided they came from within the same school. Or I guess just within the same district. We do send them between buildings.
We do.
Okay, so this is our 6th to 8th grade. Same information, same benchmarking assessments you saw from 1 to 5, but this moves on to our secondary schools. So MAP reading percentile groups, grades 6 through 8. Grades 6 through 8 over the last 6 testing periods. Broken down by grade level. Broken down demographically. And then low income and not low income. Here we have MAP reading in Spanish. These would be students who are only a part of our one-way dual language program because two-way dual language has not yet rolled up to our middle school.
I have
It's
one
coming.
more question
Yeah.
before you keep going. Like on slide 43, or I think there was another one in the reading, when you see, so that's encouraging that by 8th grade, the red is getting a little smaller incrementally, slightly, right? Is that, am I just looking for something positive, or is it, like, is that encouraging to see over time from 6th to 7th grade, our students, I know it's not the same cohort of children, but
If you're asking for something to be optimistic about,
yes.
yes, I would say another thing that to be optimistic about though is when you look at that data, and again, perhaps I'm particularly sensitive to this because my children are, this year we're in 5th grade and 3rd grade and 2nd grade. So when COVID hit, they were in preschool, kindergarten, and 2nd grade.
Right.
So one of the things we know is if you were not yet reading when COVID hit,
Yeah.
and you're supposed to be learning phonics and other fundamental building blocks of reading through the computer screen, there's a reason we don't teach kindergarten on the computer screen. It is very difficult, right? So I'm super proud of our teaching and learning team that has said what we need to do is rethink a lot of the ways that we're doing literacy so that we can have even better scores when kids who
As
were
they go
younger,
up.
right, are getting to middle school. I'm optimistic about the effort and the changes that are being made, is what I'm optimistic about. It's difficult for me to say that, yes, the 8th grade looks better, but because it's not the same cohort of kids, I don't wanna,
I understand. Okay.
but-
It's not necessarily comparable that way.
no,
Okay.
I mean,
Not in this case, because obviously a lot of the fundamentals for this cohort of students that are representing the 6th through 8th, they received them, that was prior to COVID, versus the children that the data that we were looking for the K through, or the 1st through 5th, those were the children that have been affected by the not having that initial contact or the first 2 fundamental years of elementary school.
Exactly.
I mean, I think my kid didn't know that the person that was in front of her could see her, right? Like, it took a while to be like, oh yeah, I'm not on a screen anymore. Charlie, if you're watching this, I apologize. But I think the littler you were, the more of an adjustment it was to come back to school and to doing, that is not hard data, that is my own personal experience. But again, I think we have plenty of things to be optimistic about, and play-based is a huge part of that, and the shifts that we're making in elementary literacy is a huge part of that. It's going to take a while before our data looks the way we want it to, but everyone is focused on it. We're having discussions around the data constantly. We are not hiding it. We are bringing it to the district and saying, here's what we are planning to do to make this look better, so that all of the charts, regardless of how it's broken down demographically, regardless of how it's broken down by your parents' income level, every child demonstrates that they have the skills to build whatever future they want for themselves.
Right.
That's what I'm optimistic about, that's our focus, that's your focus as a board, and that's our focus as a team,
Right.
Across this district. That is not the part that helps me sleep better at night, but if it works for you,
No, I wanna hear, okay.
We're not hiding the hard facts.
Yes.
We want our community, our families to see all of these numbers and the data, to know where we're starting from, really, because every school system in America is restarting. We have restarted. So we have nowhere but up to go from here. We're doing some amazing things, but we do expect for data to look better.
And I appreciate though the information that you are, that you are providing in regards to the support, right, that our elementary educators are, actively working on to obviously, support the children and, some of the challenges that they're experiencing because of those years. But I think it is important to note them because I think, from an outsider perspective, if you're not really understanding the data, you may think like, hey, well, that district is a mess. Well, sometimes we can't forget that COVID is still a thing, right? And it's still very present and very real to how it affected our children and the aftermath, right, of how that's going to look when it comes to their educational success, in the upcoming years, right? Not during COVID, but really post, whatever that looks like for people, right? And it is important to note that. So I appreciate you sharing that.
and for numbers people, it is also important, and I should have said this several slides ago probably, that all of this data is based on the 2020 norms, which means before COVID hit, how did students do when they took this test? My guess is when they renorm it, it will look different. And MAP is trying to adjust, they are adjusting the way they go about testing, they're trying to make it more accurate, not so that it's easier to look like you're doing well, but so that we get a better representation of what students know and can do. So they're trying to do their part, but it is important that we say, here's how we know that we've got a ways to go. And with our elementary changes, with our win period at the middle school, and with the things that are being put in place at the high school to make sure we're supporting all, I don't think anyone's hiding from it, I do think that we're trying really hard to say, how can we think differently about what we're able to provide so that we have a whole bunch of blue and green. I mean, I'm a fan of orange and black myself, but the blue and green would be nice too. All right, so here we go. I think we did this already, is that right?
Yes.
And we were on 46.
Yes,
But
you're
please
right.
feel free to keep stopping us. This is our MAP reading data for students who have been in the one-way dual language program only. And the caveat here is we are only testing students that remain in the one-way dual language program. If you are unfamiliar, that means that students who were emergent bilinguals, who were receiving EL services and in our one-way dual language programs, who have passed the access test and are no longer in need of intensive services because they are not yet proficient in English, they don't get tested anymore. Does that make sense? So it's sort of like, what is the average fever of people who still need to take Tylenol because they have a fever? Which I don't like, that's a terrible metaphor because it's not a sickness to be able to speak both languages, but it is something that we're moving toward where every time a student demonstrates greater proficiency in reading, they are then removed from being able to take this test. So keep that in mind. These are the MAP reading percentile groups for the MAP Spanish assessment and then by grade level. Again, here this proves I think this is an illustration of my point that once students have passed access, they're no longer tested. And the low income, not low income breakdown. This is the math percentile groups district-wide in grades 6 through 8. I got an email question about this slide from one of our teachers, so I want to make sure to explain that our 8th grade students who take algebra are included in this data. So their percentile groups, which are generally high, are included for our 8th graders. It's the percentile on the algebra test and not on the math 6+ test, which is a different test. So they are not included in that growth data that you saw, the orange and black graph, because they don't have a growth, because they didn't take the same test last spring, which I know is confusing. But if they are super strong in math, they take a different math class, so they have a different math test. So you can't compare how they did on the math test last year to the math test this year because it's a different test. They are included in this data, which is good to know. So when you look at breakdown over, that's been true, we've always included the algebra students, this is the last 6 testing periods, and this is a breakdown by grade. So yes, our 8th grade bar does include our students who take algebra and take the algebra test. This is the percentile groups demographically, percentile groups by low income and not low income. And that is all of them. Remarkably, what questions do you have now that we have gotten through them all?
How do you take this data and then how does this affect, because I think you also included for us updated school improvement plans. Was that with this? Yes. Or school improvement, what is, all buildings sit goals?
Yep, school improvement teams have
Teams.
goals and school improvement.
So how
plans,
does
yeah.
this translate to like school improvement
So,
goals?
go ahead.
So we, every year when I say we, school improvement teams at each school level with building leadership, they use this data to update, their goals. They also use it to monitor how close they are to their goals. Because again, like she alluded to earlier, this is one of our benchmarkers. This is in a way written into most of the school improvement plans. And so that is why we included the SIP plan, so just let you see that every single school, where no matter what category the state has labeled them or assigned them to, all of our school buildings have school improvement plans, and they use this data to monitor their the effectiveness of their strategies.
And then that builds into our strategic plan, and that helps us
And-
monitor our
And
strategic.
that's
It
why
does.
that's the next presentation.
So the schools each get their own presentation and their own spreadsheets of data as well. So they can look at this anytime they want and see how is everyone doing district-wide, but it's much more meaningful for Jefferson or for Clinton Rosette to be able to say, what are the 6th graders in our building doing? What are the 8th graders in our building doing? And then they can break students down. I mean, one of the nice uses of the data is to be able to say, here are the students that scored between here and here. How are we going to extend these students who did really well so that we know that we're pushing them to do even better? And then you've got examples, and each school can individually make their plan. Like Lincoln, where your children are, contracted with NIU to bring in tutors to help our students at the high end, to work with kids who had already done really well and push them even further. And they had great success with that. And in other buildings, they're able to say, we're gonna have this intervention period, and WIN, I think, uses map data to sort students and say, here's these kids that have showed us that this is what they need. So they're getting even more targeted. It would take forever, obviously, to talk about every building or every student, but they're able to do that at data teams and say, this student appeared to be doing well, and then there is no growth for this period of time, what happened? And a lot of times you can then bring in, this SEL side of things. So they're able to use it to paint a fuller picture of the student and help them to determine what would be the best course of action to help that particular student grow as much as possible. Hopefully that makes sense.
Are there any other questions? Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna go right into our strategic.
Next is our strategic plan update by our cabinet members. Jump in.
I'm gonna go first, I think my slides are first, is that okay? So attached to the board docs are the longitudinal tracker documents for each department. And the diversity, equity, and inclusion department is first, and then I'll just click for everyone else. So consistent, community conversations events, increasing parent representation on the district committees as well as district events, increasing and standardizing community partnerships, coming up with a systemic way of having MOU signed for community partnerships, transforming what was once in-person email meetings every month to growth-minded and collaborative professional learning communities for all of our principals, assistant principals, and deans. And then doing more application of restorative disciplining practices were all things that we celebrate that the DEI department worked on. Those were strategies that were written in our strategic plan. We also always make sure that any other plan, like our diversity plan, is aligned to our strategic plan. So those are the strategies that we are super proud of, everybody in the DEI department, and then of course we collaborate with every other department. We continue to have edges of growth, and one would be our PD for school staff and students. That is a goal that, although it's written into our diversity plan a while ago, it hasn't yet to be realized. And then our being ready for cultural coaches. I believe that when our strategic plan was first written, I think that there was a misunderstanding of what parent universities were actually, and after we received more professional development, we realized that we weren't quite ready. So that's still an edge of growth for us. Next.
I think I'm next.
All right, I think technology, yep.
All right, technology. So we've been consistently meeting our goals. So some of the highlights being one-to-one technologies. So we're in our 10th year doing one-to-one in our district, and our 7th year being recognized as Google as a Google reference district. We continue to fund and try to solve the digital divide and digital equity within DeKalb. So we continue to identify families and students specifically who need to have access, and then we try to provide meaningful ways to get them said access. So we're working with local, state, and community partners in order to combine our efforts and try to tackle this in a meaningful way for the community. Cybersecurity is forever going to be something we're trying to handle in education. Education is still the #1 sector in the industry worldwide that is attacked consistently. Typically, this is because we're an easy target. The funding's not the same as a Fortune 500 company, but yet we have nation-state actors who want our data. So we spend a lot of time, energy, and effort implementing enterprise class security methodologies in order to protect our data and our students as well as our staff. So those were some of our biggest successes. And on edges of growth within our department, we've been working with some of our newer staff members to sort of teach them up and get them ready to take on some of the roles within cybersecurity, network engineering, and areas of that. So on that note, we have teaching and learning.
Thank you, Ben. Student achievement is at the heart of our first goal and everything that we do. So it is very important to us when we look at our different areas that we are benchmarking. Using data-driven decisions is very important in an area of one of our growth areas within our PLCs. We use it, as was discussed in the data presentation, for course selection, acceleration, remediation, also used within the PLCs. We have brought in new curriculum resources, as you may know, this year for the implementation of next year for our algebra, geometry, and algebra 2 course selections that our secondary students will use. So that's very exciting.
Do we go through all 4 of them, or are we just going through the slides?
I just highlighted.
4 viewers?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I was just making sure because we're going down the slides, but for community engagement, as Monica had said, we collaborate quite a bit between our departments. So when DEI has had their community conversations, we've always had a teaching and learning representative there to answer any questions for parents. We've also invited our parents to be part of our school improvement teams, and we continue to have PTOs, PTAs. At Little John, they call it, I think, PTC, Parent Teacher Community is what they renamed theirs. So really looking to get our parents involved, and that's on track as best as we can at the moment. For educational opportunities outside of the school day, that's been a little bit of struggle after and before school, but right now during the summer, and I know because I'm looking at all these timesheets that I'm having to approve, there's a lot of work going on, and I think just during the school year, our teachers or staff, we get burnt out, right? So now we're a little bit refreshed. We know that we can come to a professional development for 4 hours and we get to go home and maybe be at our pool or just kind of rest for a little bit till the next day or the next week. So in collaboration with outside agencies, we've worked with NIU quite a bit with different with the STEAM, tutoring, like Jessica was just mentioning, Black, ROE, Delos as
some mental
well.
health.
Yep, so quite a bit of organizations that we're working with.
In collaboration with student services as well.
Absolutely, and so celebrations that we wanted to highlight was to make sure that our parent involvement through Title I nights, those have been pretty well attended. Some of our edges of growth we've had BPAC for a number of years, I think since I was a ESL teacher in the middle school, which was like 17 years ago. And right? One of the things is it's supposed to be heavily run and driven by our parents, but a lot of times we are doing the guiding as staff, and we really need to help our parents advocate for themselves and run that bilingual parent advisory committee.
Thank you. Go to the next one. Our next one is financial stability with the equity lens, and we've done quite a bit of work to make sure that resources are being allocated appropriately to support our schools, our community, our district, our department, some of those interdepartmental programs that we work with. We've also, one thing that's not added on that slide is this year we've added multilingual supports. We had the multilingual instructional coach at secondary that was not able to fill, so Billy and I realigned, reorganized, and he was able to use the position. So working to make sure that those positions work for us and being flexible within what our needs are. We also assist the buildings with similar capacities.
So for human capital of recruitment and development and retainment of our staff, we've offered quite a bit of professional development to our building administrators as well as our staff. One in particular, Dr. Garcia Sanchez, Courageous Principals. I don't think there was one principal or director that felt that that wasn't an amazing leadership development opportunity for us. So as we're doing that and as we've been talking with Mike, our grant manager, we've now slotted out Title II monies to be able to offer opportunities for our teachers as well. Right now, at this moment, we have Sarah Schaefer, our STEAM manager, and a 4th grade teacher from Cortland out in New Mexico. Thank you to all of you who approved that PD that they're attending now. So we're really looking at beginning again. I think pre-COVID, it kind of, we weren't there anymore. We're kind of like, where's the money? But now with our Title II monies, we've been able to use those funds to be able to send our staff to not just in-district professional development, but things that are outside of our district. And we really want to develop teacher leaders so that they can provide the rest of our staff with some great professional development as well.
We've also provided supports for our international teachers in partnership with our HR department. So that's been able to help support our existing international teachers and our incoming. We've also have our managers support, similar to what Billy had described, helping different groups of teachers, grade levels, and our mentoring program. We worked in collaboration with the recruitment and retainment committee. We have developed a common lesson plan template for our substitute teachers because that was feedback that we had received, so that will be implemented next year, complete with orange folders.
And hopefully that's the longest one that you do, our department. So
Yes.
a lot going on.
Thank you.
All right, so for the facilities department, facilities and safety department, in regards to student achievement, we were focusing on reducing class size, and as you all know, with the acquisition of the NIU building, that will address those needs, and so we were able to accomplish that with the plans that are in place. We were able to hire the security manager, and a lot of information and projects are still underway in regards to the recommendations from the security audit. We do need to determine the best way to communicate that information appropriately to the board and to the community, so that will be coming forth. That's why the thumbs up rather than the check mark at the end.
some of the things in regards to our celebrations, besides the hiring, the other thing we need to be aware of is the projects that we are working on through our work order system. Some have been challenging because of our staffing shortages, and supply chain delays. But that is a heavy focus into the summer, is so we can accomplish many of those safety and security items that have been pending that we want to get done throughout the buildings. For community engagement and marketing, this is focused a lot on our facility use in the district so that we can open up our buildings for our community to be able to use our buildings. We were able to hire a facility use manager who is also our auditorium manager last year. He's been focusing a lot of efforts on improving that system. We have a new software system that we'll be designing and implementing over the summer. So in the fall, we'll be able to train all of our staff in regards to utilization of that. It'll also be a better device that could be used so that our community can be able to see and request space within our buildings with a lot less issues as we have with our current system in place. Human capital, recruitment, development, and retainment. That area in our department, we were focusing on our Safety Institute days that we were able to add at the start of the school year, and we're gonna be developing on that ongoing, the training days for staff and moving forward also. The biggest hurdle we run into is just time. There's a lot of things that require training and professional development in our district based on the variety of positions we have, and we have to notch out time to make sure that we are focusing on the safety, security training that's so important in our district. That's an update from facilities and safety. Next is student services.
I wasn't sure if I was coming up either. Just gonna hit a couple of the highlights, which encompasses, I think, a lot of the 4 different areas. One of the biggest accomplishments that has occurred this school year through student services is through the leadership of our SEL coordinator, Sarah Bates. Kind of quietly behind the scenes has been working on developing a comprehensive SEL plan for the district that is in alignment with our strategic plan and supports some of the ongoing goals that we have as a district, but is doing so in a very strategic way moving forward through an MTSS framework. So goals are gonna be, have been developed to reduce the rate of chronic absenteeism, increase percentage of freshmen that are on track, increase positive responses on the 5 Essentials survey, as well as reduce incidents of exclusionary discipline. I said Sarah kind of has led that work, but it's been a lot of people at the, district level and at the building level that have really put in a lot of time and thought and energy to get us to something that is a plan that's gonna be a jumping off point for us, and coordinates our work so we're not doing things in isolation and we're being mindful of gaps that may exist. I think the other that kind of continued work there are various subgroups that are gonna continue to monitor and help make sure we're implementing the work that goes towards achieving those goals. The other celebration I think I wanna highlight is the development of partnerships, and like some of the other directors have talked about, really just getting out in our community and either identifying new opportunities to partner with community agencies or really anybody who's got a good idea to bring forward. But also looking at our existing partnerships and how can we strengthen those and tap into those resources. And so I've come and spoken to the board a lot lately about school psychologists, and NIU school psychology department has been a great partner with us, but as well as their counseling department, their special ed department, family service agency, and honestly the DeKalb mental health board and their support. The dialogue we've had with them throughout the year about what we currently have as partnerships with the various agencies, but where we would also like to go based on our students' needs. We've worked with TAILS and Common Bonds to give students that were at risk at the high school an opportunity to engage in activities and that are tied to social emotional development, but also learning how to care for something such as a puppy and the lessons that are learned in that process. Next year, we've kind of launched our Lifting Up LLC, which is our trauma-informed partnership with our first responders that will notify us when there is an incident that may result in trauma towards one of our students. A lot of that work up to this point has been getting the database set up. Next year, actually over the summer, we'll have that enacted and we'll see how that works for us. And then last but not least, a lot of effort went into putting on different parent and family engagement throughout the year. So we did 3 student services family nights, one at the high school, we did one at Cats Park most recently, and then we did one at the bowling alley, and really the idea was let's bring in families that have students with special needs. Let's get them a little bit of information, let's have some food, and let's allow them to network with one another and just have a good time. The attendance for that, the feedback was really, really positive, so we look forward to continuing that next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can start then.
Business would be the next one,
Okay.
based on the.
Alright, so for the business, our main focus has been communication with the community on how district finances work and what type of tax relief we provide to taxpayers. So one thing we always wanna try is get a web-based dashboard, or even go out to a community and kind of talk more about it and explain, what are some relief we provide to taxpayers. So that would be, it could be in the form of tax abatements, bond restructuring, etc. So one celebration for that is at the DeKalb Chamber of Commerce, under the Leadership Academy, we had a session called Your Tax Dollars at Work. So we're gonna continue to do that. We'll work with directors of communications, Rita, to either share that through a website or also just to go out to the community for it. The other main focus is sustainability of budgets and ESSER. So something, ESSER has been a big provider of funds for us, but it is ending this school year. So we submitted the last amendment just for the next school years. So we're gonna be spending that, but what's the sustainability for next? So we're looking at how the budget will look like and how best to keep our needs for the students continuing with this financial cliff. And then go to the next goals.
This works pretty good for me in terms of, one of our strategic plans is to develop a smooth transition for the new director, which I think we've been very successful with that. So I'm glad to have Amir here, and so really I'm passing the baton. You can have this pen. There you go. I got that yesterday from the demographer, so it's yours now, so. But thank you, Amir. It's been a pleasure working with you and to get him ready to move forward and, continue to do great work here in the district for our students and for our community. So here's my time to say thank you to the board and to everybody here as well. I'm gonna miss everybody. I'm ready to move on to retirement, definitely, but it's gonna be different for sure. And this being my last board meeting, just want to say thank you, and I will walk away without crying. So I've been doing a lot of that lately, so.
Thank you for everything that you have done and continue to do, right?
So HR, we're in the business of people, so we're struggling because there's not people to work anywhere. But we are absolutely doing our best. We are building our partnerships, we are tightening those, and we are really trying to make sure that we are making DeKalb known in a positive way and touching the people that want to be here. So we are working towards continuing to diversify our workforce. It may not look exactly like we wanted to, but it's incremental steps, and we are making some huge gains there. We are learning of new candidates and new interests of people working with us that we never knew about before. They're excited about the work that we're doing here, absolutely through student services and teaching and learning, and they're excited. They want to get on board, they want to be part of the change, and they want to be part of the success that our students are experiencing. As far as our development of human capital, one of the, HR has been very manual, and we've got to get away from that because we need to create as much efficiency as we can in the work that we do in the time that we have to do it. So thank you to the board. You have provided us the support that we needed to enhance our technology and to also add to our technology. So that has definitely been a benefit for us. We have been working to retain staff. That is just as difficult as it is to recruit staff. Staff leave for a variety of reasons, but I have seen that this year we have really been impacted with people making changes in their families. So whether they're relocating or they're moving on for other reasons, or children have moved on and they're empty nesters and they're ready for the next phase of life, we're seeing a lot of that. So our retainment is not as great as we'd like to see, but life goes on for people. So we have to be accommodating and supportive of that as much as we possibly can. One of our big focuses in HR has been our onboarding process, because we want people to come here and have that very first best impression possible. If we set a good tone there, our ability to retain them and for them to tell others about their great experience increases for us. So through the use of technology and through our very skilled HR staff, they have been working very close with our staff to make sure we are hitting the mark and giving them what they need. We still have gaps, and as we identify those gaps, we build capacity, and then we're able to provide better results, and then in the end, able to retain our staff. I cannot figure out where we are. Oh, here we go. Good. I need to get to my celebrations. So a big celebration I want to share is tonight on the agenda. We are asking, or it's part of the purchase orders, we are asking for enhancing yet another system. FMLA is huge for us because life happens. People are experiencing a variety of medical conditions, whether for themselves or their family members. We've got growth spurt going, we got lots of babies being born, but we have to manage that FMLA. FMLA is federally regulated, and we don't want any missteps there. If there are, there's severe penalties that come with that, and we don't want to go down that route. So we are looking at adding a better management system for our FMLA so that our staff have a better experience, so they know what's expected of them, so we are able to better plan and forecast what our needs are as far as staffing, and just so that we have better record keeping and that we are creating efficiencies in that work. An area of growth for us is continuing to offer relevant and timely PD as it relates to HR. HR is all about compliance, so whether it's working with our safety colleagues or working with even student services or our teaching and learning departments, we want to make sure everybody has the same information, they're well educated, and they're well equipped to do a good job. So finding the time and making sure that we're offering the right and relevant PD to support them is important to us. So we continue to problem solve around that. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, this
Next is our consent agenda, and it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items A through F as attached. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Samantha McDavid?
Yes.
Steve Byers?
Yes.
Ariel Owens?
Yes.
Christopher Boyce?
Yes.
Stacy Ramirez?
Yes.
Samantha Bynum?
Yes.
Amanda Harness?
Yes.
Not to move us backwards, but I should have said thank you to all of the cabinet members for preparing that. It was a very thorough presentation, and we really appreciate that. I know that was probably a lot of hard work to go in and build that out, so thank you. Next is our old business. Subject A is the request to bid grounds building demo and rebuild, and this is an action item brought to us from Tammy Carson. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve administration to prepare project designs and go out to bid for the demolition and replacement of the district bulk salt storage building and the district grounds equipment building. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Steve Byers?
No.
Ariel Owens?
Yes.
Christopher Boyce?
Yes.
Stacy Ramirez?
Yes.
Samantha Bynum?
Yes.
Amanda Harness?
Yes.
Samantha McDavid?
Yes. Subject B is the food service renewal fiscal year 23-24. with Aramark, and this was brought to us by Cindy Carpenter and Amir Doka, and it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the contract renewal agreement for food management services for the period beginning July 1, 2023 through June 30, 2024 with Aramark Educational Services LLC. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ariel Owens,
Yes.
Christopher Boyce,
Yes.
J.C. Ramirez,
Yes.
Santa Bynum,
Yes.
Amanda Harness,
Yes.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Steve Byers.
Yes.
Subject C is the PLC Work Institute Workshop out-of-state travel. And this is an action item brought to us by Billy Wermo. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the out-of-state travel request for up to 10 administrators to attend the Professional Learning Communities Institute July 12th through the 14th, 2023 in Madison, Wisconsin. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Who's second?
Me.
Aye. Christopher Boyce,
Yes.
J.C. Ramirez,
Yes.
Santa Bynum,
Yes.
Amanda Harness,
Yes.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Steve Byers,
Yes.
Ariel Owens.
Yes.
Subject D is the Diligent Board Docs Professional Development Conference out-of-state travel, and this is an action item brought to us by Deidre Salas. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve this out-of-state travel to the Diligent Modern Governance Summit. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
J.C. Ramirez,
Yes.
Santa Bynum,
Yes.
Amanda Harness,
Yes.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Steve Byers,
Yes.
Ariel Owens,
Yes.
Christopher Boyce.
Yes.
Subject E is the IASB Press Plus issue release 111. And this is the second reading, and then it is the being brought as an action item by Dr. Garcia Sanchez. Did anyone want to raise any questions or concerns?
Nope.
Okay. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the IASB Press Plus issue release 111 as attached. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Santa Bynum,
Yes.
Amanda Harness,
Yes.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Steve Byers,
Yes.
Ariel Owens,
Yes.
Christopher Boyce,
Yes.
J.C. Ramirez.
Yes.
Next, under the future elementary school business is the action item new elementary budget and design, and this was brought to us by Tammy Carson. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve administration to continue with the design and planning for the new elementary school based on the estimated 70,100 square footage and estimated project budget of $33,850,000. Is there a motion?
So move. Second.
Roll call, please.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Steve Byers,
Yes.
Ariel Owens,
Yes.
Christopher Boyce,
Yes.
J.C. Ramirez,
Yes.
Santa Bynum,
Yes.
Amanda Harness.
Yes.
And then now we are on to new business and administration. Subject A is the overnight field trip for an FFA convention, and it is brought to us by Dr. Donna Larson for information and action. I'll let her explain it and then we'll read the motion.
Perfect. Perfect timing. It is next week, so June 13th and 14th. And our DeKalb FFA chapter was invited to go to their state convention. So at this time, they'll do breakout sessions, learn some leadership skills, and then also vote on their actual leaders for the FFA chapter for this year. Any questions?
Any questions? It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the overnight field trip for the FFA convention on June 13th and 14th, 2023. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, first, the whole board.
I don't. Steve?
Sure.
And then who's second?
Daisy? You got next, Chris. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Steve Byers,
Yes.
Ariel Owens,
Yes.
Christopher Boyce,
Yes.
J.C. Ramirez,
Yes.
Santa Bynum.
Yes. We've been here since
Subject B is the overnight field trip DHS Outdoor Adventure Club, and this is information, Dr. Donna Larson.
Great. That's why I stayed up here. Second overnighter. Now that the pandemic is over, we are venturing off to a lot more opportunities for our students. So Outdoor Adventure Club used to go to Devil's Lake for an overnight previously before the pandemic. And then it was brought to our attention that the students wanted to adventure this opportunity, if you will. And this will take place in August, so it is a 2-night overstay. Club members, the fee is, I believe, $50, and I think about 8 students have talked about committing to go. and 3 chaperones. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
consensus to bring this back for action?
Yes.
Yes.
Subject C is summer hours for 10-month administrators, and this is on for information and action. Billy Guermo and Deetra Salas.
Hi again, everyone. So, many of you, if not all of you, know that our elementary principals are 10-month. So how that works is after student attendance, they stay with us for 10 days and they continue planning for the next school year. However, this school year, we talked about the great professional development, right, that we provided them. We took 3 days from their 5 days to be able to provide professional development for them. So they didn't get the planning that they usually get, and they do have 5 floating days, but they also use that for hiring staff that they need to hire that they haven't hired yet. So reason I'm bringing this for information action is because we had some Title II FY23 monies that we had, I don't wanna say leftover, but we were looking to expend prior to June 30th. So with that, I'd like to request these additional hours for our 10-month administrators.
Any questions? Okay, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the per diem summer hours for 10-month administrators to be used prior to June 30th, 2023. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Steve Byers.
Yes.
Ariel Owens.
Yes.
Christopher Boys.
Yes.
Stacy Ramirez.
Yes.
Samantha Bynum.
Yes.
Amanda Harness.
Yes.
Samantha McDavid.
Yes. Thank you. Subject D is student discipline number 060623. It is brought to us by Kyle Gertis. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the expulsion of student number 060623 for the remainder of the 22-23 school year and the 23-24 school year. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ariel Owens.
Yes.
Christopher Boys.
Yes.
Stacy Ramirez.
Yes.
Samantha Bynum.
Yes.
Amanda Harness.
Yes.
Samantha McDavid.
Yes.
Steve Byers.
Yes.
Subject E is Navigate 360 Service Agreement, informational, brought to us by Kyle Gertis.
Alright, good evening. As I spoke about a little bit ago, we have been in the process of developing a SEL comprehensive plan. And part of that process had us take a look at what do we have in place from kind of personnel, but also what are our gaps? So what should we be doing that maybe we're not hitting the mark on? And then do we have the tools to be able to do that? Over the last, I would say, 1.5 to 2 years, we've really addressed, I think, some of the personnel, including most recently 2 additional deans of restorative behavior. Now we're shifting our lens a little bit to look at some of those gaps and how we can help fill those gaps or get tools in people's hands that can help us better improve either access to supports and services for our students or to assist them in their role that they're performing as a staff member. Navigate 360 is kind of a broad company that offers a lot of services. Currently, we utilize them for our behavioral threat assessment training, and we also use them for some of the ALICE training that we do in our district. We've identified a few other aspects or products that they offer that we would like to move forward with. More specifically, there are 3 different kind of main kind of areas. We're looking at something that can help us a little bit more with our positive behavior supports, which would include not only a digital tracking form that is easily accessible for staff as well as students when it comes to kind of those positive tokens or positive reinforcement, but also on the flip side of that, a way for us to streamline and digitally house our office discipline referrals. So right now it's a duplicate form that somebody has to fill out by hand. It has to go to somebody, then it has to get entered in our system. This is going to make it a more efficient process and hopefully improve the communication from the administrator who might process with the student to that staff member who wrote the referral to kind of communicate, here's what was done, here's kind of next steps. The other kind of aspect that we really like about this product is that there is a component of restorative discipline or restorative activities that can be used in that discipline or consequence process. So what we would be looking to do is to a dean of restorative behavior or an assistant principal or principal, when they sit down with the student and say, hey, we have to here's how we're gonna go about restoring the harm that was done. This actually gives some tools and some resources that student or maybe that student and their family can engage in to help with that process instead of kind of creating something that we don't really have available. Last but certainly not least is also, our board policies and which is, school code says that we have to do certain things around student mental health. We have to be able to provide suicide and depression awareness and prevention, teen dating violence prevention, and then prevention of bullying. It's an unfair to say that we're not doing those things, but we're doing those things at a very building level. So it's dependent on the people in the building, which unfortunately changes from time to time. It's not coordinated, and what we would like to do is say, as a district, here's how we address these things, and we do it consistently across all 12 schools. This is gonna give us the ability to have curriculum that doesn't necessarily have to be created. It's readily available, or online modules and things that we can have deployed to either staff, administration, students, or families in a much more simplistic way digitally. All of that said, there's a relatively high cost to adding these packages. There in total would be around $87,274.64 for an annual subscription. We have looked at our grant funding, and this is something that we'd be able to cover through one of our through our IDEA grant that is also tied through the ESSER funds that we receive. So we are looking for the board's support in moving forward with this kind of initiative, I guess, through funding through our IDEA grant. After this year, we would reevaluate, is this something that's working for us as a district? Do we need to scale things back? Do we need to eliminate it? Or are there more features that maybe we want to consider adding if the dollars are there? With that, are there any questions?
After the initial year, do you know, do they offer, like do they do multi-year contracts for a less, like a reduced price?
That's a good question. I have not explored that with them, but I do think maybe I would talk to, looking over at Tammy, because I know they've got a little more experience with this system, is maybe we can partner together and talk about if we move forward with not only a long-term contract, but maybe packaging some of these things together.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to do it for 1 year to start with to make sure it's actually what you need, but. Any other questions?
How does this system, and I know this is a random question, but like, how does this system currently like align or speak to the current systems that we already have in place that our students normally access or families access?
By systems, do you mean?
Like Google, Skyward, like do they speak to each other at all? Like where if I'm, working with a student and I, have to, let's say communicate to you, let's say that we're both in a team, right? Like how does that correlate, or how do those systems speak to you? Like would you be able to see it if you're at a school versus another school, at a different school, I mean, or is it like kind of like a school-based by base, school-based system, I should say?
Yeah, I know it talks, so like, obviously with our ODR system, it's gonna have to talk to Skyward, and it's gonna have to, so there'll be connectivity through systems that way. I don't know the best way to answer your question, to be honest with you, without getting into the details of getting this up and operational. However, I do know there's various settings that we have, so if you're an employee at Huntley Middle School, you'll have access to the Huntley Middle School suite, but not necessarily Clay Rose's suite. So there are ways that we can filter things, and there's administrative access versus teacher access versus family access.
And I think I'm just more talking like from a family perspective, obviously we wanna make sure that it's accessible to them, right? If we are gonna be offering any additional support or services. And then even from, like I know, there has been situations where sometimes people are like, oh, another system to add to the mix of the systems that we already have. And in some cases, like Google will work with, the systems where they kind of speak to each other in regards to like their live type of thing, right? In regards to the data that we're entering and things like that. So I was just wondering if they at any point talk to each other in regards to like having the most accurate data, up to date, all the time type of thing.
And I guess looking at the technology aspect of it as well, are we gonna have to build a new infrastructure to host this system, or will it just flow into what
This
we've
is
got going?
cloud-based hosted, so that's why the cost is the way it is. Because it's not on-premise, so there is a cost savings to it not being on-premise as well that is realized through this period of time. But in terms of these systems communicating, that's something in between student services, the technology department will work through, but we have used Navigate 360 as a platform before, and the integration was not terrible. So I assume we will get through this together.
Not terrible, very
and get
comforting.
through it. But long story short, yes, these systems do work, they do talk, and there are SAPA agreements in place already for student data privacy and things like that,
Okay.
so.
What do you have more to say on that?
Just one quick to follow up on you mentioned like access to families, so there's probably a digital access, component to this, but it is, the resources for families are available in up to 150 languages.
Oh, awesome.
So it's something that we can use to like send videos home if that works for a family, but it could also be, hey, we're gonna have you come in, we're gonna talk about what happened, but we're also gonna go through some of these resources that could be good. I'm getting ahead of myself, but family nights, these are some of the things that we could pull in as informational things for families that doesn't require us to go get a speaker or somebody else, so the language piece I wanted to make sure to add, 150 languages is appealing.
Which is awesome. And again, I'm not against it. I think it's a great opportunity, right, for us to offer additional support. I was just, wondering, because that's often a question that people ask, like, oh, another system or another survey, another this, right? Like, how do they merge with one another? And that's, I guess, what I was talking about in regards to speaking to each other. And Ben kind of got where I was going with, do they speak to each other? Because sometimes they're not live all the time in certain programs, and I think that causes some confusion sometimes, or a delay in processing information and who's getting what at what time, right? So, thank you.
I don't know if I have a question actually. I was just thinking the part you said about the way that this potentially could help communication between administration and teachers in regards to student discipline and restorative practices is really exciting to me. I think that's a gap that we have right now that we've heard a lot, and so I hope that this will help fill that gap.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely sounds like a great program.
If this doesn't work, that's still a gap we have to close, so, yeah.
Any other questions for Kyle? Consensus to bring this back for action?
Yes.
Thank you. Subject F is professional development with Monarch Education Consultants LLC, and this is information. I'm Monica Parker.
Yes, we have seen the manifestation of Dr. Garcia Sanchez's vision for the last 2 years. This school year, we have received testimonials from veteran school leaders, principals, assistant principals, and deans, as well as new people in those positions that said that they had never received or they had never even conceptualized that they could have professional learning communities amongst themselves. Testimonials also include, because we do feedback from every monthly meeting, testimonials also include that from the first time in their career here in DeKalb, our meetings went from being in-person email meetings, you know what I mean? But this all could have been email, to them actually being able to tie what we did in our professional learning time to their own professional growth. They were able to hone their skills, and they grew as leaders more this year than they felt that they had in many years. Myself, as a former school leader in this district for 8 years, I never got anything like what the principals are getting now. So as a result of principals telling us what they need, principals, assistant principals, and deans, we were able to do a series of professional development, not one and done, because we know that never works, right? But we realized that professional learning opportunities included them learning how to appropriately use culturally responsive methods to recruit and retain staff, to administer assessments to their staff to understand where equity gaps existed. We use anchor texts such as the Leader's Guide to Unconscious Bias and Equity Through Excellence this year. Although we have had texts before, I can tell you with certainty they were not used as anchor texts. It was, we showed up to meetings, it was, hey, tell us your favorite quote after the 3 chapters you were supposed to read. That did not happen. But we actually had leaders leading each other. So leaders did research and read some of the texts themselves, and then came back and taught each other on top of professional communities. what did we find out? At the end of our year, principals, assistant principals, and deans told us that they still would like to have more professional development in the area of difficult conversations, PQS rounds, data dives, and POCs, how to actually facilitate a professional learning community like the one that they have the privilege of being a part of in their school buildings. So we are attempting to align our strategic plan and diversity plan because we have to address the gaps that have been noted in our state mandated equity learning continuum. If you don't know what that is, the state of Illinois has published on our district report card where we are as compared to every other school in Illinois. And there is a section called Elevating Educators, and we know that we need to focus on that. We also need to address the disparities highlighted in the DEI portion of the Human X survey. So the Human X survey that we took as a district now twice, there are DEI questions, I think it's about 80 of them that they pulled out and they were able to show us our results. And then we also know that we needed to pursue professional partnerships. Why? Because although I believe I'm amazing, there are people who know a lot more about moving from case studies, which we've been studying, and research and articles and books, to moving to what equity looks like and how we move to justice in the school system. One of them is being able to evaluate as a leader where those equity gaps are and knowing exactly how to address them in your building. For that reason, we looked at our ESSER 3 money that was already there, and DEI had already asked for a certain portion of the ESSER amount, and with that portion, we would like to contract Dr. Cheryl Watkins, the consultant for Monarch Education Consultants. She will come in and do 6 sessions beginning Friday, August the 4th, and then going throughout the entire year. And as you can see, I'm not gonna read it for you, but there's a lot involved in that proposal.
Questions?
I will say I'm bringing this to you because over a certain amount of money we bring to the board, but I'm not asking for any money at least.
Just cause I've never had any of these sessions before, is this pretty comparable just price-wise to what one of these would normally be?
This is more economical than others that we research. I spent an entire year trying to find an economical
So I was just breaking down the
Option.
hourly rate for those in-person sessions, and I'm like, holy cow.
Oh yeah, consultants are, paid well.
Very
Any other questions? Great.
Consensus to bring this back for action?
Yes.
Thank you. Next up, subject G is the 2023-2024 school year parent-student handbook update, and this is also brought to us by Ms. Parker, and it is informational.
Okay, so I am here representing the Parent Student Handbook Committee as well. I just want to give a quick shout out to all of the members of the Parent Student Handbook Committee. For the first time in the history of the Parent Student Handbook Committee, we had we expanded our membership to be more inclusive, to represent our variety of stakeholders, meaning we had parents very consistently attending our meetings. We also had some school board members consistently attending our meetings, as well as in previous years. The meeting happened once a year. It was usually in May, and it would be 4 secondary administrators making decisions. And our previous process was we paid a subscription to the IPA model. We would line the IPA model up next to ours, and we would just go through in about maybe a 6-hour meeting, and we would scratch it up, and then we would have somebody retype it, and then we would come. And really, there was never really a discussion about it. It just got adopted. But 2 years ago, we said that doesn't really make any sense considering this is a guiding document. And so we did a overhaul last year. And then this year, we decided that we really needed to get eyes outside of the district on it as well. So just to let you know, it is a fluid document. What is our handbook? It is not policy, let me be very clear. Our handbook has never been and will never be policy. That is not in the purview of the committee. Only the school board, of course, can adopt policy. Superintendent recommends it and the school board adopts it. But it is, it provides underpinning for us to have a positive culture and climate. It's really usually the place that parents go to or students go to if they have questions about our procedures. How do we get here? This is how we got here. I think I went over a couple of times. This is important because, again, this is the first time, although it wasn't school board policy, I believe I was in a meeting with Dr. Garcia Sanchez, and we were talking about it, and I'm like, I've been in the district since 2007. We've never done that. So then we said, well, you know, it's in board policy. We should be doing it. So this year, we had our Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee, which is a school board committee. It is regulated by school code, so we did have an open meeting here in this room on May 22nd where we reviewed the school the handbook, as well as we had opportunities for the public to come in and make comments as well. So there are some major updates, and I'll just go through them really quickly. Reminder that all of our major updates either were recommended by our district attorney. We had two, when I say district attorney, district legal counsel, not the district attorney of, like, you know. We had two legal counsels look at our document. So they got it in September, like the beginning of September, and all the way up until just this morning, they are still making sure that what is in our handbook lines up with what is in school code, and that we are not putting ourselves in a bad situation by having things in writing. So some of the major things is, we used to have a separate high school appendix that no longer exists, and that is because the high school appendix would sometimes contradict what was in the other piece. Since we are a unit school district, it didn't make sense for us to have a separate high school, so the high school things that are important have been pulled out and put into the other piece. We had to legally, we had a death and family absence code that was a little different, and so we had to change that. And also, we did not include civic events because it wasn't a law prior to us adopting this, you know, the last one. Now it is, so we have it in there. We also just updated some of our language because it said that parents had a opportunity to not provide consent, and that's no longer true. They have to provide consent for us to bill Medicaid. And then just certain things like additional language about care of epilepsy and diabetic care is now there. We also removed language because in our previous handbook, it said that, we said that, hey, if your kid wants to go on a field trip and there's no one to go with your child, and your child requires medication to your field trip, we want you to go on the field trip. That's not right. You cannot force a parent to go on a field trip. You know, we have a lot of working parents. And so now we have had to change that. Some of our lice language was removed. It was a misnomer that it was actually a school board policy. It is not a school board policy. And so because it did not align with policy, it didn't make any sense to have a page and a half about lice. We do have life information. If you were here a few years ago, you remember that, but we had removed that. And then our code of conduct was actually hyperlinked into our handbook. If you ever tried to look at something in our old handbook, it just was very cumbersome. Now everything is hyperlinked. You can type in one word and it'll pull you right to that page instead of you have to go through 116 pages to get to it. We had to remove the language disruptive and inappropriate, and that is because there are, I guess, a couple of cases that went to the 7th Circuit that didn't jive very well in those particular places. So they said, no, just use the word must not disrupt the educational process. So we're gonna use that wording as well. And then we have been using expulsion and abeyance and social probation as possible consequences, but it wasn't actually listed in our handbook, and now it is. And then search and seizure has always included student powers, but we didn't have in that search and seizure place, so we put it there. And then we also added what should happen if a search has to occur. It was happening in practice, but we didn't have it in writing. And then we had to thoroughly cover what parents' rights are as far as being able to look at all of their students' records. That has changed from 15 days to 10 days now, and for them to be able to inspect surveys. That also was thoroughly covered. Again, that's because of school code being changed. And then we had to increase our charges for our technology Chromebook agreement update, and that is because things cost more money than they did a long time ago, right? I think one other thing that's in here is we did remove the word excused in our attendance section for makeup work. So what's next? We're going to increase representation. We found out that I have some amazing former students who have reached out to me via email, who will be in high school next year, and said, I heard that you, Principal Parker, are in charge of the handbook. I want to be part of the committee next year because I don't like this. I said, well, come on. So we're going to have invite 8th graders through 12th graders to be part of the process next year. And then, of course, this document is about almost a little bit more than 35,000 words. We have to get 35,000 words translated into Spanish and Arabic really, really soon. It takes a long time to get that done. So the sooner by next time, if we get this approved, we have to get that done. And then, of course, as we did last year, we had 3 meetings in the beginning of the school year where we shared like this to parents. Parents had the opportunity to come to New Hope Missionary Baptist Church, and then we did 2 virtual meetings where we allowed parents to ask us questions about any of the changes in the handbook. Are there any questions?
Of course there are.
Of course.
Can you speak a little bit more to the changes around excused absence and what school code that kind of stems from, kind of what that means for holding students accountable for doing their work and being in class? We've had some questions about that, and we just want to make sure that we understand it and that everyone understands it.
So it's Illinois, it's ILCS 5/26-1. And I actually did speak to, for about half an hour today, some people who were part of the communication and cleared up some misunderstandings. In the future, we'll just have phone conversations to clear up understandings. But the result, any modifications that we do, that particular modification was removing one word. In our attendance section, we legally have to say that we are going to provide makeup work. We have to say that. It was as a result of, on September 13th of 2022, we decided that we would bring in legal counsel to look at it. And in our handbook, when she saw that, well, both legal lawyers said, why do you have in there that it's only for excused absences? And we said, well, because, that's the bare minimum. Really, it was like, well, legally, that's all we have to do. And she said, yeah, but that's the bare minimum. And what happens is if you put it in writing, you are now liable if someone, as a parent, comes and a good example that we had this school year was we had a parent that was battling cancer, did not have the strength and energy or to call in. So then that child was not allowed to make up that work because it was not excused because the parent didn't have the wherewithal to call in. So what she said was, you are making exceptions anyway. And so for you to say, I'm not going to make exception in writing, you are now liable if you refuse student makeup work. And so we are trying to increase access to dignified educational opportunities. That was the antecedent when our committee started having this conversation in September. The conversation went from September, and then on January 16th meeting, that was the day that we, as a group, decided that we would remove the actual wording. There are people here that are nodding that were part of that conversation. And let me be clear of what we're talking about. The parameters of what that will look like will happen at the building level. A district committee cannot make decisions about the parameters of the practices, how it's going to work out. The only thing we did is out of 35,000 words was remove one word because again, our legal counsel said that we, her exact words were, why would you do that? Why would you, the question was, why would you say that you would not make an exception? Because that's what you're saying, you're not going to make exceptions. And we do know that, unfortunately, I as a high school student, I got mono for 3 weeks. And so right away, I would be out of my days. I think I was a sophomore, I got mono. I would be out of my days. That means though that last week, I would not get to do any of my makeup work, even though I really do have an illness. So having spoke to some of the area coordinators today, we do understand that there are different codings that can be entered, and then when you run reports, you can run reports that cuts and skips would not even be part of it. It would be for students who have unexcused illnesses, unexcused family crises, and things like that.
I guess the concern that I think myself and other board members might be feeling is where legal counsel says we need to be more vague so that we have less liability. But by being less clear about what the definition is, are we not opening ourselves up to more liability? Because now it's up to every building to decide, this is what we do with late work, this is what are we not already, like you said, we're already making exceptions. Teachers already have the wherewithal to know this was a reasonable reason they were not here today. While there's other students where you know that they're just walking down the hallway and they're not there. With this change, we're now inviting, they have the right to be able to do their work just like the student that was already in the classroom.
So as I stated, it would be coded, and we have what we call attendance codes. And so when you look up a Monica Net would be absent in its UIL. You know right away that a Monica Net was sick and unexcused. She wasn't just cutting.
So I guess if I'm reading this and I'm a parent, so I'm just gonna read it as a parent and not a board member. If a student is absent or suspended from school, she will be permitted to make up all missed work, including homework and tests for equivalent academic credit. If an elementary and middle school student is absent or suspended, the number of days to turn in makeup work will be equivalent to the number of days the student was suspended or absent from school. So K through 8 has the number of days they were out, no matter why they were out. They were out because it was excused, unexcused, or suspended. They have those same number of days. Now we're moving to high school. So I'd like a clarification on this. If a high school student is absent or suspended, the student will have until the end of the quarter in which the excused absence, it says excused there, okay, or suspension occurred to submit makeup work. So we're saying we're gonna allow a high school student to only make up work if they have an excused absence or a suspension, not any absence.
So,
is that what we're saying there?
So that is the number of days. It's two separate things there. And you're looking at the new draft that's attached to this, yes. So yes, the high school students, it used to be a time, I'll say it like that, that we would see more suspensions at the secondary level, for sure. And so we specifically have to address suspensions verbatim. That's what school code tells us. That's why it's separated into 2 different paragraphs. And so that's why it says it like that. Now, as far as, I'm sorry.
Why are we giving them till the end of the quarter? So if they're on day 1 out for 5 days, you're telling me for the next how many weeks, they can do whatever they want and they can turn in their work on the last day. That's what it's saying in here. Okay, let me read it again. If a high school student is absent or suspended, okay, again, if a high school student is absent or suspended, the student will have until the end of the quarter in which the excused, so now we've thrown excused in there in that sentence, absence or suspension occurred to submit makeup work. So again, if day 1 of the quarter, they're absent for 5 days, they have till the last day of that quarter to turn everything in.
Well, in
That's
practice,
what this says though.
I understand that.
Yeah.
In practice, we have given them if you can speak up if I'm wrong, until like the week before the last quarter.
But if
And
I
that's
was a
for act-
parent,
and
I'm
that's for
tell-
excuse and that is for
Okay.
suspended, yes.
But we need to be careful with words then, because if I'm a parent and my kid was out for 5 days at the beginning of the quarter, they have till that last day of the quarter to turn in that work.
That is true.
Okay.
And that has been
So
our
why are we
practice.
doing that? Why are we setting ourselves, kids up to fail, in my opinion, by not setting expectations? So we're telling elementary school kids, you only have the number of days you're out to make up your work. But for some reason, we move to 14 to 18-year-olds and say, oh, you can just do it when you want.
But that's not
I think the
really
language is trying to, and I know that it
Yeah.
sounds like with the vague piece of the liability comment that was said. However, we're looking at some students and we're trying to give opportunities and to make it equitable for everyone, as well as the teachers, that there still is an accountability piece at the end of that quarter so that they don't fall further behind. But what does that student need outside of the 5 days that they missed? Then they come back and they're trying to catch up, and as well as our teacher workload of, okay, now I have to catch them up on the current work, but I'm still going to create a plan, not just say, now you have till then. But creating that timeline piece of working with our kids of, okay, what do you need for that? So aside from just the language, then at the high school, we also created a testing makeup center and tutoring center too. Just individualized for our students outside of even IEPs and 504s, but of our students that, let's say they are gone for 10 days. And just to give that piece for our teachers to feel a little bit more less workload too, of, okay, now I have to turn around and grade this within 5 days. And the check-in system, not, now you can do whatever you want and you still have till the quarter, to the end of the quarter. It might look like that if we need to talk about, and again, this is good, of anything that we need to modify or suggest or talk about in terms of putting more language in to support that system. But I understand what that can look like.
I mean, I'm just thinking about too, if you think about it from like maybe a teacher's perspective. So now we open this up to any student being able to turn in any work by the end of the
that's where the
quarter.
criteria comes into line of, you have to check in and we need to scale back and look at that content mastery. What are the standards that the students are trying to show for content mastery? And how does that look for the student that her parent has cancer, or the parent, or the student that's just down the hall?
Sure, but can we go
But I
back
get
to
it.
that word, cause you said you were removing excused out of this,
No,
so
no,
excuse
it was
should
already
be in that last sentence?
So that draft includes that excuse has been removed from the first paragraph. That paragraph
Well,
is
it's
going
all
to-
one paragraph.
So that section is going to remain excused, because you won't, if you're unexcused, you won't have until the end of the quarter to make up your work.
But what I'm saying is, you said you were removing excused, but in every sentence, it just refers to absence, except that last sentence about high school.
Right, in the other sentence, it had excused in front of that.
But that's when,
But it's no longer there.
I'm still confused at what you're saying.
So
Because
in
it
the
says if
other
a high school student is absent or suspended, the student will have until the end of the quarter in which the excused absence. So are we saying we're not going to allow them for unexcused?
No, so if you go back to the other, I don't have it in front of me.
I know, I was trying to look it up when I was scrolling.
But if you go back to the, I don't remember what, if you go back to the other part of the.
It just doesn't make, it's not clear.
It's not on here, I think it was in the
Oh,
I don't think it's in your
So I
presentation.
guess, maybe to sum up what she's saying, obviously, we as board members, like, we've got every code, policy, handbook thing that we could look at our disposal. As you mentioned, parents and students only have this one resource to go to. And if we're clearly confused on what this is trying to explain and not understanding how it's gonna be implemented, how are our students or parents supposed to have any idea how this applies in person?
Right. So again, that goes back to when we adopt this, then we have those conversations with parents. We have open forums right here in this room. Parents are invited in. We also do hybrid meetings. We also do virtual meetings. And we explain to parents what it means, and we break it down for them.
Now, does anybody else have questions about this portion? Cause I have a different thing I wanna ask a question about if we're.
So let me
absolutely.
finish what I was saying about that. So you will see, the reason why you don't see excuse in the other portion of it is because that's where we move. In the beginning portion of it, it just says absences. It used to say only excuse absences.
Well,
We
right
got
here
rid
it's
of that
saying,
word.
right here it's saying in the high schoolers,
Yes.
no matter if you're absent or suspended, the student will have until the end of the quarter in which the excused absence or suspension. So that is confusing. That excuse should not be there if you're saying it's no matter what your absence is or suspension. In that last sentence, what it is stating is you're only going to allow them to go to the end of the quarter for an excused absence or a suspension,
Yes.
not an unexcused.
Yes, that's exactly
Okay.
what it's saying. We can make it clear.
But that first sentence says any absence.
Yes.
So that's where I'm saying you're gonna have conflict with parents
Because it
because
doesn't say
it's not
unexcused
clear.
or.
Okay.
It's, I'm reading it and I've read it I'm like, that is not clear and that's where you're gonna have a little bit of conflict.
Okay.
So it needs to, the verbiage needs to clearly define whether you remove the excused and you're allowing all absences till the end of the quarter, or you say, you know, high schoolers have the number of unexcused days to complete work, and those that are excused absences or suspension have till the end of the quarter. That's just not clear.
All right. I have a
Yeah.
meeting with our attorney.
Okay.
She'll clean it up.
Cool. You're up, Chris.
Oh, okay. I just had more of a, just clarifying what exactly removing this would entail. It is, if you're looking at the handbook, it's page 102, it's number 3. It's all school assigned disciplinary consequences, in example, detention, Crow's Landing, Saturday, etc., will supersede extracurricular practices and contests. And in parentheses, it just talks about, do they wanna eliminate it because they feel it's doubling punishment? So I'm trying to understand, are they saying that they want to remove it? Because then if you had a detention at the same time as practice, you would get to go to practice instead of detention? Or what is it meaning when it's saying supersede extracurriculars?
Means just what you're saying, that if you have an after-school detention, which is pretty rare nowadays, but if you have to do something like that, then you would not go to basketball practice. You would take care of that first, unless the coach and the person who assigned the discipline had a conversation and something else is worked out.
Which I guess the bigger part of my concern is that this just includes all school assigned disciplinary consequences. So if we gave a student an out of school suspension, are we then also expected to let them show up for football practice that day?
No, of course not. If they're out of school suspension, that's part of the communication with parents. We put it in writing on an officer's discipline referral. We also do follow-up, we have to do legally follow-up communication that includes a last paragraph that says, your child is suspended, they should not get anything else.
I'm just not understanding why would we wanna remove this section then, cause it doesn't seem like we want to get rid of your disciplinary measure being before extracurriculars, which are privileges, not rights.
Right, and as you note, I believe that was the attorney's notes on it. If I remember correctly, she said it was redundant, that we already had said it somewhere else, so we were just removing it from that section.
Okay.
That was a lot of, we went from about 100 and, I forgot how many pages, down to like 108 pages. Because we found out that we were saying the same thing in 8 different places.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I don't think so. Sound like it. Consensus to bring this back for
Yes.
action.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is subject H, DHS summer school staffing request 2, 1.0 instruction assistant FTE request, and 1 certified special ed teacher, information and action, Kyle Curtis and Deidre Salas.
Sure. All right, so coming before you with a request for 2 individual assistants to support the high school summer program offerings which are going on right now, as well as 1 certified special education teacher to supervise and also support students with IEPs that are in a Edgenuity credit recovery class. It's something that students with IEPs have been able to access in the past. However, we didn't necessarily have the right personnel in terms of training, which a special ed teacher would possess, to accommodate and modify as needed. And so in talking with Dr. Larson and her team just about how we can better provide the support that our kids need over the summer, this was an idea that was brought forward. When we looked at staffing as the high school kind of planned for this summer, these were things that came up a little bit after the initial staffing request as needs that were gonna have to be brought forward. And so they were, I believe, posted as anticipated positions pending board approval. This is just coming forward to get the board's approval for those things.
Go ahead.
That's right. Just it cost $4,000 for the special ed teacher for the summer term. For the 2 assistants, it's an hourly rate of $14.50. So based on however many hours they work throughout the summer, that's what the calculation is based off of.
Will you, seeing that summer school's already started, will you be able to staff this pretty quick?
So that's where the anticipated posting allowed us to kind of move forward with that. And so the answer to that is yes. Nobody's been, yeah.
So that's why it's information and action.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the hire of 2 1.0 FTE instructional assistants and 1 certified special education teacher to support the DHS summer school course offerings. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Christopher Boyce,
Yes.
Stacy Ramirez,
Yes.
Santa Bynum,
Yes.
Amanda Harness,
Yes.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Steve Byers,
Yes.
Ariel Owens.
Yes.
Thank you. Subject I is the ESY, so extended school year FTE SLP request 1.0, FTE request information and action, Kyle Gertis and Deidre Salas.
Similar story, different position. So as we kind of geared up for extended school year this year, looked at the students that were gonna be that qualified and that were gonna be attending, the number of students that were gonna require speech and language services exceeded what school code said one speech path could handle, which would be 60. So with 74 students, we needed to add it to additional FTE for that, and so we're coming forward to the board asking, again, as information and action, to add SLP for extended school year at Cortland for this summer term, $4,000 for the position, and it has been posted as anticipated, and we do have pool that would allow us to fill it.
Any questions?
And this is to stay in compliance, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the hire of 1 SLP FTE for the 22-23 extended school year program. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Amanda Harness,
Yes.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Steve Byers,
Yes.
Ariel Owens,
Yes.
Christopher Boyce,
Yes.
Stacy Ramirez,
Yes.
Santa Bynum.
Yes.
Thank you. Subject J is the FADASP reclassification, and this is informational. Deidre Salas.
So FADASP is our office professional union, and within that, per their contract, which expires in 2025, there was a provision that the district administration and FADASP leadership will work together in developing job descriptions. So as we move forward in trying to get that work done, we realized that job descriptions in the past had been designed by classification and not by position. There are 3 classifications that are identified in the FADASP contract, and that's OP1, OP2, and OP3, OP standing for office professional. What we need to do is develop job descriptions based upon the position. So if it's an elementary secretary or if it's a bookkeeper, the job description needs to identify the work of the position and then identify what classification is associated with it. In doing that work, we realized that some of our classifications were off. So based upon responsibility, duties, and tasks that are done on the job, there were inconsistencies as far as equity in positions as well as in the tasks that were done. So this proposal is requesting that we reclassify certain positions from one classification level to another. At the pre-K and elementary level, we like to reclassify the office professional from an OP1 to an OP2. We do have 2 larger buildings that have 2 OPs there. One OP would remain in OP1, and then the second one would be classified as an OP2. At the middle school level, we have an OP1, that's a 12-month position that serves as the bookkeeper. That position is what we're asking to have reclassified to OP2. There's one at Clinton Rosette and one at Huntley. At the high school, there is a school secretary that provides service to the full building, namely the administration, including both principal, assistant principal, and deans, and supports families as well as a number of other aspects of the building, asking to reclassify that from OP1 to an OP2. And then here at the Education Center, our front desk receptionist, which also provides support to HR, reclassifying that from an OP1 to an OP2. That person provides support to the entire district as well, not specialized, but district-wide. So the request is to take 13 positions, reclassify from OP1 to OP2. It does have a fiscal impact of $37,622. That is for a total cost for all affected positions over over a full school year. Any questions I can answer?
No, consensus to bring this back for action?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Subject K is speech and language teletherapist, Sunbelt Staffing, SLP. Information, Kyle Curtis. Oh, we didn't organize this correctly to keep you up here all at once.
Thought about hanging out in the back. So this is looking at the 23-24 school year, so not summer, but speech and language pathologists are a tough a position to fill right now. And over the last couple of years as a district, we really struggled to fill those through our kind of normal means, meaning somebody applies, we bring them in for an interview, we hire them. That happens, but not as regularly as we need to fill our openings. So we've had to work with various staffing agencies, and this school year actually we worked with Sunbelt Staffing, which works with VocaVision, which is a way of teletherapy for speech and language services. And we contracted with a therapist who did a really nice job for us. She worked a lot with our outreach students as well as our students at private parochial schools who have services. We continue to look to fill our openings, however, we have been unsuccessful at this point, and we need to go back to looking at contracted services for next year. And so with that, we have the ability to bring back the speech and language pathologist who has worked with us this past school year, bring her in for the full school year next year, and we'll be able to expand her role and kind of serve a greater number of students than we were able to utilize her this last school year. So the SLP would be contracted to work 40 hours a week for the entire school year at a rate of $102 an hour. In total, the contract would be $146,880. Any questions?
So just to make sure I have an understanding, this contract will not have them being in person whatsoever. We're paying $146,000 for her to be on a computer screen somewhere else talking to the students, or?
Correct. There's more that goes into that. So there is, boots on the ground, so to speak. So there is somebody that's gonna have to be kind of logistically making sure the students get where they need to be, help troubleshoot things. Of course, we don't wanna leave students unattended, but the actual service delivery will come from a speech path who will be virtual.
Did we feel, obviously we've brought it back up for recommendation, so we have seen that it's worked well with our students then?
It has, I mean, for a lot of students, in person's always gonna be best, right? But I think because of the pandemic, because we've had to shift, we've had to push ourselves out of that comfort zone. There are certainly students that virtual therapy is not gonna be the best option for, and we have, as a district, have to be responsive and aware of that, and then put kids in front of speech paths that need it. However, we have seen this be an effective way to deliver services to kids in lieu of somebody in person. I will say every time I talk to a staffing agency, I start with, my preference is to have somebody in person. Do you have anybody? And if they do, great. If they don't, then we'll start entertaining a conversation about teletherapy. It has been proven more effective than I think even I cynically would have thought maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
And just, sorry, one more follow-up question. obviously we've been going through staffing agencies. Have we attempted any dialogue or contracting with Northwestern, which I'm sure has a fully loaded staff of speech therapists and pathologists that would work through them?
Northwestern Medicine.
Yes.
I have not had conversation with them about that. That's a good thought.
Is the contract binding so that if somehow we were able to hire someone after the start of the school year, that we would be able to ship to in-person services, or we'll definitely need this either way?
I'm gonna be pessimistic with my answer. We have 3 openings right now, and so I'm very confident that we're gonna need this in person. Hypothetically speaking, my experience with contracting agencies is there's always a way to get out of that contract. It's just maybe at what cost, or if they're able to reassign that staff member to another district, so to speak, they would be more open, I think, being flexible.
But if we have currently 3 positions open, the likelihood that we're gonna need the services are very high.
Yeah, and just for comparison, we had 3 positions open from October of this past school year through the end of the year.
Right, yeah.
Any other questions? Consensus to bring this back for action?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Subject L is the gas and electric procurement, and this is informational, Tammy Carson and Armir Doka.
Okay, so we have our Nanya advisors, she's gonna present. And I'll let you.
This is fancy. Good evening. Hi guys, I'm Becky Thompson with Nania Energy. There's some new faces, so I'm here basically to inform you about energy, and I know you're so excited, right? Like it's been, I know you've had a lot thrown at you tonight, so I will try to keep it high level, but so that you understand what this means and how it impacts the bottom line, the operating budget, and why we're all here for the kiddos, right? I've been working with the district for almost 3 years, 2 years, 2.5 years, and we are third-party advisors. So in the state of Illinois, you have the option to purchase your natural gas and electricity outside of the utility, so ComEd and NICOR. They're always there. They are the pipeline. They own the electric lines. If you have a power outage, they're still who you call. But the actual juice itself is traded on the futures market, much like corn or soybeans or other things you may be familiar with. And so this proves to be a really good option for public entities because pricing is really volatile with utilities. We all pay at home, and it's gotten kind of crazy out there in the last year especially. So when you have a finite operating budget that you have to work within, having the ability to procure your energy supply at a fixed rate at a discount to what the utility can offers many benefits that you're able to utilize, right? So we've been working with you guys for several years now. I've been doing this for about 10 years, and we kind of sit on your side of the table and represent the district for all of the retail energy suppliers that are out there in the market, help guide you through the procurement process, identify any threats or opportunities that are out there, because you all, as we are hearing tonight, have a lot of things going on. And as much as Tammy, I think, would love to watch the energy market every hour of every day, she maybe has 1 or 2 other things that she's focused on at the moment. So just briefly to get everyone on the same page, I'm just going to share where we're at today. So we have both electricity and natural gas. We have purchased them in tandem with one another, but they are 2 separate contracts purchased differently. And so I'm just going to kind of share where we're at and what's going on in the energy market right now and considerations of looking to the future. To be completely frank, we're here proactively, just more to bring everyone up to speed. Your contracts for both your gas and electric are not up until June of 2024. You can purchase these at any given time. You do not have to wait until, say, a month before expiration. So it allows you some bandwidth to be opportunistic and identify some opportunities in the market to maybe take advantage of some cost avoidance or potential savings. So there's a lot of details on here. What you really need to understand is that your fixed rate right now for electricity is 5.7 cents per kilowatt hour. Comparatively, last summer, we all paid at our homes over 11 cents. So your current fixed rate, when we last went to market, was at some of the lowest prices of all time. And the district had the foresight to enter into a long-term contract, which was outstanding, because it was at a discount of about 50% of what you would have been at if you had just been on the monthly market rate. Same kind of thing with natural gas. You have about 31 cents per therm. Last summer, we all paid $1.20 a therm. Yeah, it was super fun, right? So again, the district went to a long-term contract with this. It expires June 30th of 2024. Considerable cost avoidance as a result of entering into this contract, and freed up those operating dollars so that you could focus on other areas. So this is my favorite slide. This is pat everyone here on the district on the back. Collectively, that's about $470,000 just in the last 12 months that you've avoided as a result of entering into this procurement process and locking into those long-term contracts. They were each 3-year contracts, so this was, do the math, it's a pretty considerable savings for your taxpayers. So let's talk about the energy market. I know you're so excited for this. This squiggly line represents the futures market. So each color you see here represents 1, 2, or 3 years into the future of what natural gas prices are going to look like. So in this kind of purchasing strategy, you're buying today what you're using tomorrow. So think of it like you have a 500-gallon drum for diesel that you're putting on your property, and you're buying every gallon for $3, right? So every gallon that you use is $3. So every day at the gas station, some days it may be $2.50 and some days it may be $3.50, but because you have that fixed volume on your property, you're always paying $3, right? So it's the same kind of thing. Energy markets move every minute. They're a constant moving target. The arrow here represents where the prices were the last time that you entered into contract. And you can see what has happened since. And this is for a variety of reasons that we have all lived through. You may be familiar with something that happened in 2020, maybe a pandemic that was unprecedented, was the word that we heard 4 million times. So that certainly had an effect, but really this is the result of supply and demand disparity. Producers were not making any money for a really, really long time when it came to energy. So Wall Street had an appetite to stop investing into natural gas production specifically. Then COVID hit. So then there was no demand whatsoever. So all of the oil rigs, you may have heard of shale fracking out east. That is a fancy word for natural gas production here domestically in the United States. We've all but stopped that during COVID, and we can't just like turn the spigot back on. It takes a while to get everything ramped back up. So where we see these big spikes after are where production hadn't quite picked back up after COVID, but demand returned, and in a big way. Manufacturing returned, everyone went back to work, and then we had a war happen where we don't rely on Russia for a lot of natural gas, but the rest of Europe does. So since they had sanctions in place to no longer purchase natural gas from Russia, they decided to buy it from the world's largest exporter of natural gas, which because of the shale fracking that we all now know about, we are the world's largest exporter of natural gas. Okay, so I know that that's a lot of backstory, but I just want to kind of create the atmosphere of what we're dealing with. The market of today is vastly different of the market of 2021 when we last did this. And these are all the kinds of threats and things that we have to consider when we're making these purchasing decisions, because there's no beating the market. It's just timing it for your school district at a time that helps eliminate some of the risk. So the reason that I'm here now talking to you about this a year in advance is that dip that we see there at the end, which made no sense, except that we had the warmest January in like the last 30 years. Remember I mentioned supply and demand? We have excess supply right now. So the reason that we're here to discuss this and bring you kind of in the loop as to what's going on is over the course of the next 12 months, there may be some of these opportunities that allow us to be proactive in the procurement of your next contracts to allow us to take care of these dips before another one of those blips maybe occurs. That was a really quick energy lesson. Any questions about how all of this works? Okay, So the next one, same squiggly lines, different commodities. So this is electricity. Electricity follows natural gas because electricity has to be made using mainly natural gas now. In Illinois, we have a heavy reliance on coal. We also may be hearing about how those coal plants are being retired and shut down, and solar's not quite there yet to replace that production. So natural gas and electricity have about a 90% correlation. And what that means is when natural gas prices jump, electric says how high. So if we were to overlay these graphs, you would see that they were pretty comparable to one another. Again, you can see where you were in the last time you signed the contract was beautiful timing because it really just went up from there. And the unfortunate thing about being in this supply and demand kind of funky place that we're in right now is we're really weather reactive. So if we have a hot summer, things probably won't look great. If we have a mild summer, maybe things come down just like they did after this winter. So that's just, we want to kind of share the landscape with you. So where are things going? Another really fun energy graph for you guys at 9 o'clock at night. I'm so sorry. This is put out by the Energy Information Administration. This is the federal government who has, their main job is to predict, taking all factors into place today where they think prices are going to go. If anyone has ever done any trading of any stocks or anything, that squiggly green line we see at the top and then the squiggly green line at the bottom is what we call the spread. This is the biggest spread I've seen in 10 years. What this graph tells me is that they don't know where things are going to go. They're like, well, it could be really good or it could be really not good. This would be the equivalent of a meteorologist saying tomorrow could be 30 degrees or 100 degrees. Truly, this is what it is. The blue squiggle, the light blue line that says STEO forecast is short-term energy outlook forecast. They're like, okay, if everything works out the way we want it to, which is how things generally work, right? This could be where prices are, so they could be around this range. But what this basically does is, if you were thinking, when is a good time to act, or do you have that crystal ball? This tells us that even the federal government, whose job it is to predict where things are going to go, has very little confidence in where things are going. So I know I'm full of great news for you tonight. So from there, what do we do with this information, right? The first step is the strategy discussion, meeting with the administrators, talking about these kinds of factors, relying on our information. We're giving them regular updates. I always say, if I'm calling you, pick up the phone because I'm calling you for a reason. And then I believe that it may be moving to possible consent or recommendation at the next meeting to grant administration the ability to act quickly, giving them pre-approval to enter into a next contract. So if it does present an opportunity and a quick drop, rather than waiting until the next board meeting, giving them the ability to go ahead and take advantage of those opportunities as they become available.
Thank you. Any questions? Consensus to bring this back for action?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Subject M is the intergovernmental agreement with the Illinois Department of Healthcare and Family Services, informational with Amir Doka and Kyle Curtis.
Yeah, this is just very procedural. It's not a new contract. It's they changed the way we claim reimbursement from them. So they're asked for an updated intergovernmental agreement. So just to give a little background on what this is a Medicaid reimbursement. We work with the student services for any type of services they provide for Medicaid eligible students. The business office then goes and claim it to the Illinois Department of Healthcare and Family Services. So again, this is just a procedural.
Any questions? Consensus to bring this back for action?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And then subject N, amended intergovernmental agreement with City of DeKalb. This is information and action tonight and is, oh, go ahead, Dr. Garcia Sanchez.
This item is being presented to the board for information and action as it relates to school building safety and security. We discussed this in closed session and do not recommend that it be discussed in open for security reasons at the request of law enforcement.
I'll just read the recommendation then. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the amended IGA with the City of DeKalb. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's Chris's turn, Jackie.
Samantha McDavid?
Yes.
Stephen Byers?
Yes.
Ariel Owens?
Yes.
Christopher Boyce?
Yes.
Stacy Ramirez?
Yes.
Angela Bynum?
Yes.
Amanda Harness?
Yes.
All right, next in the superintendent updates, you might have more to say, but I'm just gonna do this part really quick first, so we can end on a high note.
Okay.
I'm just gonna make sure everyone had a chance to look at that evaluation tool and that we have consensus to move forward with that.
Yes.
I have a question about it, if I could.
Of course.
I was evaluated as a teacher a couple of times, and I've never seen the weighted rating that's at the end. Typically, each standard would be, just this kind of subcategories would be where the weight of it comes from, and I noticed we have one that is significantly higher than all the rest, and I'm just asking for clarification on that.
I'm sorry, let me understand the question better.
Or just like the distribution of the.
Like, certain standards are weighted, like they're priorities
Oh, I
compared
see.
to the other ones.
Yeah, so it's the weighting at the end of that is based on the level of standard that is more, like it's like a priority for the national standards. So it's weighted a little heavier. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, but it's like significantly heavy, but then it's only got like 2 subcategories.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it's actually that much.
I don't know, I can probably share, I believe I shared the actual national standards, the booklet itself.
Okay, so I need to
And
look
then
in
it
there
probably
for
would explain it a
more
little bit better,
information.
right?
Okay.
Mhm. So it just came from the national standards for superintendents and district leaders. Sorry.
Does that change how you feel about using it at this point?
I'd like to have more information, but before I would say I'm comfortable with it.
Okay, how is everyone else feeling? Cause I actually was going to suggest we schedule the evaluation for our next June meeting.
For it to be done prior?
Yes, we will complete it.
Okay.
Board will complete it.
I'm comfortable moving forward to schedule it.
We complete it in closed session. I guess I'm looking to make sure that I guess we at least have majority of people comfortable with that.
So the goal is to have the evaluation completed by the.
Yes, and I can send some more information in an email, but, okay. Alright, it sounds like we have consensus, okay.
So yes, I can go ahead and move forward with.
Yes, you can complete it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, on to the rest of your update.
Okay, thank you. So before I move into my final thing, I always want to end on a high note. So just improvements in drum roll from where we were last year to this year, based on specific requests that were made by the board to me around communication. And so I wanted to make sure that I shared that with everyone. We've made significant improvements not only in our social media and our website. I've begun a monthly message that goes out on the first day of every business day of the month that has been received very well, and I get a lot of feedback. We have supported the culture and climate in different ways, either through the Human X survey or in supporting different aspects of culture and climate at each individual building. And then most importantly, the culture and climate at each individual building has changed significantly, I believe, from where we were last year for a couple of reasons. One is that we have an intermediary management system that supports the principals and assistant principals at the ground level, with Billy and Sarah supporting the principals and their teams on a daily basis at ground level. And I've also been a part of running a school visit and classroom visits to support them. We are evaluating principals jointly, and so that not only are we informing them, we're supporting them in selecting their goals and growing them, but we also provide them with professional development and supports through the action items that are given through Sarah and Billy. So I've seen quite a bit of difference and nuances in there, and I got a lot of good feedback from school leadership, from principals, assistant principals, the deans, even cabinet mayor here, to talk about, they could answer questions around the additional supports that have been given to them for their personal professional growth. So I wanted to say that, because I know that that was one of the caveats that really brought, that were really led by the board last year, even though I know some of you weren't here at that time, but I wanted to make sure I updated them. Finally, but definitely not least, I want to take another moment to thank, where's she at? To thank Cindy Carpenter. You mind standing up so we can see you? There aren't enough words for me to express what I have been able to learn and grow from you this past 2 years. I feel like I had definitely a coach and a mentor in you, fiscally and financially, and learning a lot of things. I hope that together we learned something and we're able to change the course of what the district looks like and feels better and feels different. But definitely you laid the groundwork for making sure that we were solvent and in the black and could do the things that we're doing. So thank you so much for everything you've done for this district before me, and that will be had after after you leave and as life continues on in DeKalb. We hope that you will not be a stranger. We'll wait the 60 or 90 days that we can bother you. But then we'd love to see you visit us from time to time, anytime that you'd like. So thank you again, Cindy, for all your work and dedication that you've done for our district. On behalf of me and cabinet and the rest of the district, I'm sure the board is also in concurrence with that.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
The last few weeks, it's been a long time coming. It feels like it, seems like it was gonna happen sooner rather than later. Now that I'm getting closer, I'm just reflecting on my years here and the people that I've worked with and everybody that has supported me. It's overwhelming. It's all kind of coming now, and I'm feeling very emotional. I've been very emotional for a long time, at least the last couple of weeks, and my team has just treated me so well. All the things that they've done for me, it's just this, again, overwhelming. I don't deserve it. But I so appreciate everybody here, and I'm gonna miss you all. And it just wasn't me, obviously. It was a lot of people, the community, the kids, the various boards I've worked with, the various superintendents, just everybody. It's always a team effort all the time, and it will continue to be that way. I know that. And I've just honored. It's been honored to work in this district. It's spent a lot of time here. Went to school here in DeKalb. Was here a long time ago, and it's come a long way, and it's going to continue to do that. So, and you're all going to do excellent work, and you will continue to do excellent work for our students, because they're number one for sure. So thank you. I appreciate it.
That's it for me.
That's it for you. Okay, with that, the meeting will be adjourned. It is recommended that the Board of Education will adjourn. Is there a motion?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you. Good night.